Okay, we have officially started. Welcome everyone to creating a nightly homework routine. We are excited to talk to you today and provide really hopefully useful and practical tips about how to make your nightly homework routine a little bit more efficient, a little bit more smooth, a little bit more productive, and a little bit more calm. I'm joined today by Amari. Amari, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Amari Ramirez. I am a parent, but also formerly principal at one of our schools. Before then, I was a teacher, and I'm excited to be here to talk about homework.
Great. And I'm Stacy Gershkovich, also a longtime educator with Success Academies. In addition to that, I'm also the parent of 3 kids. And so I know that a nightly homework routine can be a big part of our day. And if it goes well, that could be a very nice part of our day. But if it doesn't go well, it could be a very stressful part of our day. So excited to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you being here is a sign that you are so committed to doing the best for your kid. And that is more than half the battle. So give yourself a little pat in the back. I see we've got a lot of young families, kids starting kindergarten, first grade. Homework is maybe new. You're just getting started. We also have some families of kids who've been at it for some time, but it always could be better. And we can always make 1% improvement. So with that said, there's a couple of things that you've probably already heard, but we want to make sure that before we dive into talking about specific challenges and specific types of kids that we are dealing with, and probably dealing with multiple. Mari, can you just share us some general tips on how we can make homework successful?
Yeah, so there's definitely 4 really big things that I'm sure every parent here has heard. Be consistent, the where, the when, and the then. Obviously planning ahead, communicating with the school, and ultimately being the coach, not the teacher. That one is a big one. I think it's very stressful. You want to help your kid. You tend to forget that your job is to coach them, get them excited about the work in front of them.
Right, that makes up a good point, right? The purpose of homework is great. I know sometimes homework gets a bad rap, right? It's stressful for us. Sometimes kids or parents don't see the value of it. And frankly, sometimes homework is given by some schools that isn't valuable, or you don't see the necessary value. We want to make sure we say a couple of things. One, homework is important because it helps kids practice things they did in school. It helps the teacher see what kids are doing independently when they're not there standing over their shoulder, or they hadn't just learned the lesson 5 minutes before. One of the most important reasons we give homework is so that kids can develop this independent learning. Right? It is one thing to do learning when you're given 10 minutes at school or 30 minutes at school. It's another thing to plan your week, do it on your own without your teacher standing over you. In addition to that, the reason I actually like homework is because it's the one thing that gives me insight into how my student and my kids are performing in school. I can see very quickly if they breeze through homework, or if homework is every night, very frustrating to them. It gives me a little sign to say, oh, this is what's happening probably in school. I need to your point, think about reaching out to the teacher. And we do want to encourage everyone. Teachers really do want to hear from you. So if you're hesitant to reach out, if homework is a struggle, please think about reaching out to your school early and often.
Right, I agree.
Cool. Okay. So the other thing we want to make sure is that you're a longtime educator. Do we need homework to be 100% perfect 100% of the time?
No, and I think that's a misconception sometimes where as parents and quite frankly, as educators, we get stressed out about something being so perfect because quite frankly, school is important. But it's more about the process of doing the work, sitting there, the routine, the discipline that really builds up the kid's capacity. And it's more about that and less about 100% right. Obviously, we want them to do it right and we want them to put the best effort in, but it's not more important than the process. And we sometimes forget that, and understandably so.
Right. And sometimes we don't know the answer, right? We can't help our kids because we haven't been in physics class in quite some time, or the math problem in front of us is different than the way we learned. So we want to encourage, our goal as parents is to really make sure our kids are putting forth their best effort. And if the child is struggling with the homework consistently, reach out to the teacher, make a note. Okay, so those are some general tips, probably things you've heard before. What we're excited to talk to you today about is we've got some unique kids in front of us, all right? We're all dealing with unique kids. So we've kind of thought about in school, in our experience as educators, what are kind of some typical types of students we see. So in a moment, we're going to tell you all about those. There we go. So we've got these four. Obviously, not any kid fits neatly into a box. You may have one child who's one, another child who's another. You may have a child who goes into both or a little bit of everything. But we are going to go through these and think about what are Amari's going to share with us, some tips for what you can do if this is what you're dealing with at home. So take a moment, think about maybe where does your child fall? Again, maybe not perfectly, but we'll go from there. Okay, so let's start with the procrastinator. So we've all heard about the procrastinator, right? This is the student who comes home after school, has plenty of time to build Legos and play toys and wants to watch the TV. And then as soon as bedtime hits, we find out that there's some big assignment that needs to be done tomorrow. And we're rushing to help our students, maybe right before we leave in the morning, maybe right before bedtime, when we were hoping that we were about to turn off the lights and have a little bit of alone time. But that doesn't happen because we've got to create a solar system.
Right. I mean, I think this is the student who can be really frustrating because as a parent, you have so much to do when you get home. You have to if you have more than one, you're setting everything up. You also got to get dinner on the table. You got to make sure they take a bath, obviously, all the things that every parent here knows. So that procrastinator has to get a system built out for them to support them, right? And so one of them is chunking assignments into manageable parts. That means, and quite frankly, that's going to look different depending on the age of the child, right? A kindergarten, there's going to be a lot more hand-holding and maybe smaller pieces. And as they get older, you like build that out, but you want to set up a system. Again, to our point earlier, it's less about whether they're getting 100% or like doing it perfectly. It's the system that you want to build out, this consistency, this discipline around homework. And so chunking it, right? Like they may need some time to play the Legos, right? And so you come home, you have 30 minutes, we're going to work on this assignment or whatever assignment you have. Cool, you get a 10-minute break to go play with your Legos. We come back and that might work for some. And obviously this is going to be dependent on your child and their needs. And then ultimately celebrate your kid. I think when you have a procrastinator, there is a reason why they're avoiding that work and you want to celebrate their wins, right? So they sit there for that 30 minutes, they get it done. They came and followed the plan, celebrate it, right? And be excited for them because that matters. And that's going to really confirm that sitting and doing it is the right thing to do.
Yeah. So thinking about those little chunks, right? We have a lot of homework to do, but there are ways to break it down. The reading is separate from the math potentially.
Sure.
We've got a little. Okay. We are going to move to the perfectionist. This is a good one, right? Perfectionism in some ways is a good thing, right? We want our child to achieve the best that they can do. But when we talk about the perfectionist, we talk about the student who maybe is taking an inordinate amount of time, so much time that maybe they're not getting to all of their assignments because they are focused on making the little things perfect. And I'm not suggesting that a child who wants the homework to be right and clean and neat, because those things are important. But I'm talking about the child who goes to an extreme length and maybe it's a little bit debilitating, right? They get stuck and they refuse to get on because they want to make sure their name is perfect, right? So what do I do?
And I think any parent here who has a perfectionist has probably sat through this and struggled through it. It's challenging, right? Because they want to get it right. So it's not like a negative thing, but it's not fair to them. It's not good. It doesn't feel good. And so it's important to set time limits. Like you should communicate with the teacher and have an understanding, how long should it take my kid, right? And so if your kid does well and understands the material and it's an assignment that takes 20 minutes and they're taking 40 minutes, something is off, right? And so this is going to sound maybe radical, but sometimes you have to stop your kid and say, you know what, this assignment, you had 20 minutes, it's okay. let's go do something. And I really would push parents, when you are pushing a perfectionist to stop doing that work, maybe start an activity with them and join them so that there's like a transition. Because I think, or my experience has been that a lot of the perfectionists, they want to go back to that work. And so spending some time with you away from the work, kind of refocusing them into like, there are other things that are equally as important or even more important. And so taking that time, and when you are taking them away, remember that when kids, you're talking to kids, if a kid is upset because they had to be taken away from their assignment, maybe giving them a minute to like come back and then having a conversation about the process being more important than the work being exactly perfectly neat. And I think for some kids that will be shocking. They'll be surprised that as a parent, you're not so focused on it being perfect, but more so that they're sitting there, they're going through it and they're getting better.
Yeah, one thing you had shared with me earlier, which I thought was great, is making sure that you're clear on what the teacher's expectation is. So you had suggested, if you're not sure, you can take a picture of the work and ask the teacher, or put a note in the folder and ask the teacher, or in the email or whatnot. But really making sure, if you're not clear what is expected for a third grader, a first grader, making sure you're clear on that so that you can show your child, this is what your teacher expects. Your work looks like just that. We can move on now. But if you're not sure on that, it's a little hard. So that's the time you'd want to reach out.
Agreed.
Great. Okay, the speed demon. I like this one. I've got one of these at home. Right? It's my child who speeds through work. In fact, prides himself on how quickly he does his work. He often, unfortunately, in doing so, while he's capable of doing right, speeds through and gets things incorrect, makes silly errors. So he's not speeding through because it truly is easy. He would benefit from slowing down a little bit, because sometimes, particularly in math, he answers a question that's not really the one being asked because he didn't totally read and understand the question. So help me out, because I've tried to tell him to slow down.
Yeah, I think in the case of if it is too easy, then I think the communication with the teacher is a key part here. Talk to the teacher, get more work, because clearly it's too easy for your kid. That's, I think, a little bit easier when your child is speeding through and getting them all wrong, and they're like, I am getting it, I'm done, I want to just be done with this. I think this is where, again, creating a system around this is going to be important. A checklist, like when I'm done, what do I do? Right. And so first, in some cases, it may be like, well, when you finish, you have to read the question again. For example, the math problem if you know your child doesn't read the questions carefully, when I'm done, I read the question again and I have a second strategy, right? And there's going to be different depending on the subject. And again, communication with the teachers is going to be key, because if your child is doing the speed demon at home, but it's not doing it at school, then we obviously want to make sure that the environment has changed and there's toys there and there's other things that they want to get to. And so that system is going to need to be extra like sharp to make sure that the kid feels successful. And then a different strategy that I thought of is, if your kid is a speed demon and they're just trying to like be done and get out of work, then still ask the teacher for extra work and say, well, you finished so early, we have more work here for you to get done. I have a sneaking suspicion that kids who are very smart, all of them are very smart, will sit there and say, maybe I should take my time with the assignment, because otherwise I'm going to get more work. But ultimately, that's not going to fix forever. But yes, I think the speed demons will be refocused, and back to like reminding yourself to celebrate that win, right? When they do sit there, they do check their work independently. You celebrate that, and so that they're encouraged to slow down and go for getting the work done correctly.
Yeah, and you've said that now for two. I think that's true, right? We've got to take a moment and celebrate. Kids are in school all day working really hard. They're coming home, they're doing lots of things. I think so often when it's going well, we say nothing, or at least I should speak for myself. And so I appreciate the reminders that for each of our students, we need to make sure we take a moment to celebrate the good, and for us too, right? There's a lot that we're doing really well, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. Okay, the forgetter. I also have a forgetter. I joke that my forgetter is very good at putting things next to the backpack.
not in the back.
not in the backpack. And so when it's next to the backpack, it doesn't get to school. And then vice versa, when it's next to the backpack, it doesn't get home from school. But the forgetter is the child who, you know, doesn't have the homework, forgot the book that they need, left it next to the backpack. What do I do?
I could see this now early in the morning, trying to rush to school, being like, oh my God, not just you, I'm sure many of our parents, I've seen it definitely in my schools. And I think, again, back to systems, creating a checklist of what do I need? It's not like an infinite amount of things you need for school, right? And so, I mean, this is going to can feel like almost micromanagement of the process of going to school, but I think sometimes you do need it, right? A list of, do I have my trumpet? Do I have my notebook? Do I have my computer? Whatever it is that they need for school. And initially, you may need a system where they just check it off. Maybe a whiteboard where they like cross it off so that they're bringing everything to school. And quite frankly, again, celebrating that they did it. They're like, great job. And continuing that process, and then coming home from school, giving them kind of a list. Maybe it's on paper more so, and everything that they took home, they're bringing back that needs to be taken home. Ultimately, that should create a sense of like, oh, I need to bring this, I need to bring, and sometimes strictly just writing what you need to bring home can be a reminder of, oh yeah, I need to do that. I will say, for these forgetters, saying, John, like you keep forgetting your stuff, like, oh my God, it's so annoying, is not going to really be helpful. And quite frankly, it is frustrating. It would be frustrating to me too. But just reminding ourselves, like, there's a skill gap and we need to come up with a strategy that supports that skill gap so that they get better.
They're not forgetting on purpose, right? No one wants to be the kid that shows up to school without their homework, especially when they did it, right? I like what you're saying because this checklist takes it out of my brain and puts it on them. And so you mentioned, oh, is this micro? No, it's not, right? You're actually encouraging and empowering your student to do something that, frankly, I make checklists for my life all the time. So I appreciate that. And we'll try that because this hits home, especially this morning. I'll take this moment to remind you, if you haven't had a chance to put your question in the Q&A and you have a question for the Q&A, go ahead and do that. I do also want to let you know that obviously there are specific tips that come to math and literacy. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to put those in the chat. So you're going to get a chance. If you are in the chat and you can access it now, you're more than welcome to look at them now. We will also be emailing those to you and they'll be up on our website. But these are specific strategies that you could use and you can pull up when your child is reading or writing, or if your child's doing mathematics and those specific areas are a struggle for you, we'll share those with you. So, okay, this hits home. This is me. So Amari, I'm gonna have you help a little bit. But I have kids in different grades with different profiles. How do I manage it all? And I will start by saying, I'll give myself a little bit of advice. If you're trying to do it all at the same time, it's going to be really hard. And so one of my pieces of advice is to think about, I'm going to help all of my kids. I'm going to make sure all of my kids get their homework done. But today I'm going to focus on this one and setting up a different routine. I'm going to do that checklist, but I'm not going to do tonight that checklist plus this, plus that. There's only so much that I can take on. So would encourage you to focus on, one thing a night and not, 1% changes add up really quickly.
Yeah.
But what else?
I agree. I mean, I think parents, again, obviously as a parent, I am a big cheerleader of parents. I think parents are incredible, doing incredible things. But I think sometimes try to do too much. And especially my super moms out there who are incredible.
And super dads.
And super dads, shout out to my wife. Anyways, I think setting a system, and again, I've said system a bunch of times, but I'll be more explicit. Where they sit and having a quiet space is a foundational thing that you can do. And it does not take you like coming up with this incredible thing. It just needs to be in the same place, I get it, like sometimes we're gonna be a little bit later, but still, same place, quiet, everyone is working on their homework. And then Stacey, I agree with you, like there are different kids with different priorities, and you know your kids, right? Who's in the higher grade, who's in the one that needs the most support, right? Like if they have an exam on Friday, they may be the ones you want to be checking in on. If you have a kindergartner, they're like learning this, you're gonna have to sit with them. And so you're going to adjust depending on your kid, but really foundational, it's important that they sit down, and please parents, do not send like your oldest kid to the bedroom. Often and it's like, oh, well, they're older, they can do it by themselves. I promise you, they're on their computer, they're on Instagram, they're doing something else, they're not doing schoolwork. And so have them all sit there. You don't have to talk to them. Sometimes, quite frankly, your presence is plenty, right? They want to please you, they want to make sure that they're doing right. So if you have a procrastinator, maybe saying, hey, bud, like a quick, hey, bud, let's go get busy is plenty, and continuing to work with your perfectionist or whomever you are trying to really target that day. The one thing I'll also add is make sure you're celebrating all of them. I think it's easy to celebrate the one you're working with or the youngest one. The youngest one tends to get the like, oh my God, you're so great, because make sure you're celebrating them all. And if you forget any of them, please celebrate the oldest. The oldest tends to be.
Are you an oldest?
I'm a middle child,
Okay.
but I know my sister got like but you want to celebrate the oldest, because sometimes the oldest, you're expecting them to do more. And even when they're little kids. And so celebrating them all. So again, to bullet, have a place they're sitting, celebrate them, and target the kid who you think needs it the most. And the best thing about it is that you will not be wrong. Like any of them you target, if you improve their discipline around homework, you've done a great job already.
Yeah, and listen, we called this webinar Creating a Nightly Homework Routine. You said it before. It really is important that you set up a routine. That doesn't mean that it's always at the same time every day, right? Our schedules are such that sometimes homework has to happen before an activity, sometimes it happens at night, after an activity, after dinner. But I do think looking ahead at your week and trying to figure out, when am we doing this? The where, as much as possible, should be consistent. It is frustrating to me when we sit down to do homework and then someone's like, oh, I don't have a pencil. Oh, I forgot this paper. If homework is happening in the same place every time, having a little bins of pencils and maybe a crayon or a charger or whatever it is that you're going to need, it's already there. It saves a lot of that time where someone goes to get a pencil and then disappears and doesn't come back for a while. So I would just encourage to think about, what routine do you currently have? If you don't have a consistent routine, how can you make it more consistent? Kids thrive, and I think people thrive with consistency. So think about, what is that routine, and how can you make it a little bit better?
Great.
Okay. Oh, this is a good one. How can I help my kids stay focused on homework? Right. I'm imagining in my house, right? We start on homework and all of a sudden this is a great time to tell me a story about what happened at recess, or a time to look out the window. Oh, there's a bird. Let's talk about the bird.
That bathroom,
right?
All the things.
Yeah. So how do I keep my kid focused? That's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is back to the communication with the teachers. Why then? Is their focus just strictly they're like not paying attention? They're like distracted with all the things in the home that they want to play with, they want to tell you about, or are they struggling with the material? Is it more of an avoidance tactic? And that, obviously, these are two different spaces. So if it's an avoidance tactic because they're struggling with it, then it's understandable that they would avoid the work. And so you want to make sure you're coaching them, talking to the teacher, getting them extra support so that they feel more confident. And again, praising them when they get better at it. If it's just strictly like they're distracted, we want to remove as many things that are distracting. And so if they want to tell you a story, which quite frankly, they want to, and they should, right? Say like, hey, Johnny, and I'm sorry, I'm using Johnny. Johnny, like, how about we talk about that during dinner? Like, you could tell me and your siblings all about that story. We would love to hear it. Right now, we're focused on homework. And I'm not saying that's going to be the magic pill. It's not going to like fix it right away. And you're going to have to consistently redirect them to coach them to let's get back to work. And if you have someone who is very distracted, you may have to sit with them. and ask them questions and coach them around doing their homework. The goal would be to start with like a heavy hand and wean them off of it. It's quite frankly, you want them to be independent from you. But yeah, I would find out, is it work avoidance or is it just like a distraction that like there's so much in my mind that I want to talk about that I'm not staying focused, because of the two different approaches. But both, again, is about being there, talking to them and encouraging them to get busy.
Yeah, one of the things that I know, we have a lot of parents of K1, 2, 3 students, even 4, 5. The beginning of our school year, one of the things we do is to help increase independent reading specifically, or independent work time specifically. We set timers, right? Yesterday we read for 5 minutes. We're going to try today. Our goal is to read for 7 minutes. Yesterday we read for 7 minutes. Yay, celebrate. We met our goal. Today we're going to read for 9 minutes. And we keep going on and on with that until we get to what the grade level expectation is. So I think that's one of those areas where you can do something similar at home. Going back to our different situations, right? Our procrastinator or our perfectionist, we talked about chunking assignments and setting time limits. It might be the case if you have a student who is getting distracted, we try to set a goal. Okay, today we're going to work for 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to set this timer on my phone, and let's see if you can work for 5 minutes. If the child does, congratulate them, celebrate. When I say that, I mean just saying good job, saying that. And then the next day, go for 6. Right? You still might need to chunk the assignments. You might not be able to get through all of the homework before your child gets distracted. But we always talk about, how do we make our kids feel successful? Because when kids feel successful, they want to do more. And sometimes if our child is feeling like they're unsuccessful at homework, they're going to start avoiding homework. So finding ways to make them successful, and that is maybe limiting or chunking the amount of time that they're working until they can be successful.
And I'll highlight while we look at the next question. When we say celebrate, and that's a good point, Stacey, we don't mean like buy them an ice cream. I know, I just want to make sure I'm very clear. I mean a simple validating their work is great. It's often, and I can tell you that from experience, when kids who talk about like getting you did a great job from their parents, it matters more than anyone else saying they did a good job. And so considering that, like that is plenty. And so remembering and staying on top of that.
Cool. Okay, great question. Next, thank you for putting these great questions in there. We kind of tried to anticipate some of the questions that would come up, and you guys are coming up with way better ones. So thank you. Keep them coming if you hadn't. And we have a couple more minutes. So this is a great question. The balance between independence versus being present versus coaching. And this is obviously the person who wrote this question knows that they're trying to build independence, right? They know they want to build independence, but obviously we can't just give it unless we set that up. One of the things that I know you're about to mention is that obviously this varies from September through June, and it varies from kindergarten through 12th grade and beyond. So can you tell us a little bit, how do I know that I'm striking that right balance, and what do I do?
Well, this is the beautiful thing about, like, you can always change, like you can always fix it. You should try what feels right. I think the younger your scholar is, they're going to obviously need far more your presence there and your coaching. As they get older, you'll need less of that and more building independence. I would say that if you are sitting there and you catch yourself talking so often and the kid is working and you're just talking, you probably should stop. Right? You've already, they don't need you, let them run. I think the best way is to see what they need and give them what they need. So if your scholar is sitting there confused, right, you want to coach. And again, we don't ever expect you to be teachers, right? We expect you to coach. So ask questions. You can ask, like, how would you start this? What's the best way to try, right? We don't expect you to know the answer. If you do, that's great, obviously. But if you don't, it's fine. And so watch what your kid is doing. What are they struggling with? And give them what they need. Everything you do, though, is with the understanding that eventually you want to release release that presence of yours and give them that independence. And so if you are coaching so often and you catch yourself on Monday, I was coaching, on Tuesday, I was coaching, on Wednesday, I was coaching, and every day you're coaching and you don't see any progress, you want to sit there and see, like, am I just speaking? Because like that's happened to me as a teacher, right? Where I am talking to a kid, but he actually doesn't need me to teach anymore. I've said what I said, they got it, walk away, let them be and feel independent. And again, when that growth happens, right? When you see them be independent, celebrate it, right? And be happy for them. That balance is tricky though. And so without being there with you, it's really hard to say, like, this is exactly what you should do. But my advice is watch what your kid is doing. What is he giving you? What energy are they giving you? Are they looking confident in doing their work? Then you want to back off and let them feel confident, feel good, and let them do their thing. If they need you, insert yourself, coach them. But again, try to coach with as little as possible to help them do it independently from you.
Yeah, someone once shared with me, and it was stuck with me, that your job as a homework helper changes as your kids grow. And so you start off as a coach, right? You're there on the sidelines giving advice. You're not doing the homework for them. You're not playing in the game, but you're there as the coach. You then kind of graduate to become the manager, right? Where you're giving the assignment, you're making sure you check to see that it's done, but you're removing yourself, right? You're not there necessarily every step of the way. You're giving your, child a little bit more independence, and then graduating to the consultant, right? Who, in theory, is only called by the person when they need help. So no, it's not, you have to check in and make sure, right? But it kind of moves that. And there's no specific age, right? Every kid is a little bit different, but I thought that stuck with me, and trying to think about where am I in that kind of continuum, and how do I constantly push myself to get less and less supportive. In our schools, we talk a lot about productive struggle, right? And so for the person asking this question, or for anyone who's struggling with this, I would think about, struggle is good, right? When something is hard and I do it, that's exciting. That gives me the joy of learning, right? And so I think sometimes when we see our kids struggle, it is our instinct to go in and save, and to go in and help. And what we want to encourage is to take a step back. Struggle is good. Right? Struggle is how you learn. It is when things are hard and you overcome them that they stick with you. And as we said, part of the goal of homework is to develop that level of independence and that ability to work on my own for an extended period of time. So I would ask yourself, if my kid is struggling, is it productive struggle? Or is it a point that is beyond, and they are frustrated and they are kind of getting to the point where the pencil tip might be broken, or the paper is getting crumbled, or the erasing mark is getting more and more, that might be beyond. And that would be a time where I would say, okay, this is no longer productive.
Right.
So maybe those two things can be helpful.
I think that's a much better way of saying it. I'll say that once you're in the consultant stage, I think that's like a really nice way. Just remember that you want to trust your child, but you want to verify. And so they're telling you they did their work, make sure you're checking, because as a middle school principal, I can't tell you how often I've talked to parents who say they're in 7th grade, like they told me they did it, but they haven't done it. And obviously you guys know this, you told them to clean their room and they don't, this happens.
But I told them.
And told them.
They said it was done.
They said it. And so it's good to trust them. It's good to want independence, but I would keep an eye on it. I would keep an eye on it. Even if your child is like a perfect, does everything. It's nice for a kid to know that my mom is going to check or my dad is going to check. And so there's a little bit of accountability there, which is nice.
Yeah. And to your point, if it's all getting done, great. A great moment to say great work.
Great work.
Right. And move on. So we're getting a lot of questions around that are specific to your student, your school. And I know we have parents from a variety of different schools, with different ages, with different teachers. And so I know we're sharing with you the answers that we do encourage you to reach out to your school's teacher. But can we talk a little bit about this working relationship with the school and specifically the classroom teachers that you're working with? What do I do? How do I build that relationship? What is the expectation? You were a principal, you were a teacher, tell me.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because we often, from our side of the house, we often spend time talking to teachers about building a relationship with parents. But it's equally as important as a parent to build a relationship with your teacher. They're with your kid every day, all day. And quite frankly, there's certain things, and I tell you, I've heard this so many times, like, I know, like, from parents, right? I know my kid, like,
They do.
They do. And remember, but the teacher also knows your kid, and quite frankly, a different kid with a different environment, a different situation.
Yeah.
And so that relationship is key because you're going to learn so much from your teacher about your child. And
they're going to learn so much from you, right?
Right.
You know, how can I work with my student's teacher to get my kid to do my homework? I want to make sure it's clear. The teacher is benefiting from hearing what's happening at home because it gives them information about what's they need to work on in school,
right,
and vice versa. And I'll let you speak in a moment. The school is benefiting because they can give you advice on here are some strategies that work in school that maybe you could try at home.
Right.
So how do I do that?
Right. So first and most importantly, when the teacher reaches out, please answer their calls. Please make sure you're texting them back, because when a teacher has 30 kids, if they're reaching out to you, they're taking the time, make sure that you're answering, make sure you're coming up with a plan to follow up, like when can I call you back, when can we speak again, and remembering that the teacher's not perfect, but they're trying their hardest. And so it's really easy sometimes to get frustrated with a teacher. And honestly, I know this sounds like, I'm like, please don't be mean to the teachers. And yes, I am as a former principal, but really, truly, I've learned that having that conversation, calling the teacher and being like, hey, I know you're probably busy today, but when can we talk? When can we sit at a Zoom call so that you can walk me through? I have never had a teacher who had parents call who was not interested in having that conversation, because ultimately their job, the teacher's job, and what they like to do, this is why they do this, is to support that child. And so they know you're the key player. And so reach out. If you don't have their contact, because I know different schools, like I know at Success Academy, you have the teacher's numbers and you have easy access. If you do not, find your email, call the main office, ask for a meeting. And we no longer have to do an in-person meeting, right? Ask for a Zoom, ask for a phone call. And in that call, tell the teacher like what you want. You want to partner with them. You want to work with them to make sure that the kid is doing well. And so that means sometimes the teacher will send you a picture of what the work should look like, so that not so that you can show your child, but more so you can have it as a form of reference. And so there's a lot of things you can ask for, and we can talk about it forever. But truly, the thing is, communicate often, right? Be mindful of not over communicating because they're busy, but communicate often, show and talk to the teacher and ask for guidance. You are the child's parents and you love them and know them best. But this teacher, their job all day, what they do is to improve your child's academics. And so you want to make sure that you're digging into that and asking them for guidance.
Yeah, and the teachers often have resources. They can help you make the checklist. If you're not sure what goes on the checklist, if you're not sure what the homework is, teachers obviously can point you in the right direction, help you navigate the different systems that schools are using that may be new to you if you've got a new student or you're moving to a new school. But I think parents and teachers walking together makes everyone's job easier. And so we do encourage you to build that relationship, and hopefully you'll get what you need. But I do think getting insight into what the expectation is by seeing completed work. I think for writing, for mathematics, sometimes it's hard to know what the teacher is expecting. And if you're seeing scores come back that are not, what you expect from your kid, it's good to say, well, how am I clear on how this missed the mark? And if I'm not, it's a great place where the teacher can show you what they're expecting. They also can give you good tips. They can help with checklists. Sometimes I know there's situations where the kid gives the parent a hard time about getting homework done. And so the teacher can really have a system to help follow up in the morning to help you make that a little easier. Thinking about a special job they can do when they get to school, if they get their homework complete. Teachers got a lot of things up their sleeves. Parents have a lot of things up their sleeves. I think it's about coming together and figuring out which of those things are best for your kid.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time. I think we have one more question that I think is important. We touched on it earlier. What do I do if I don't know the answer to the homework? And this happens, right? Math is taught in a way that maybe is unfamiliar to the way we learned. Sometimes I didn't read the book that the child read, and so I don't know how to help them with their response to the book. It happens obviously as the kids get older, much more so, but when they're younger, it happens as well. What if I don't know the content?
So first and foremost, don't feel bad. Again, I was a principal, and if you put a physics assignment in front of me, I haven't done physics since high school, right? So like, I'm going to struggle, and this is what I do for a living. And so first, please like shed the guilt. Don't feel bad. It happens to all of us.
So we don't have to study AP physics the year
Exactly. But it's back to that, like the discipline, right? No teacher expects that the kid is every assignment is based on what they're learning in school. So if the kid was paying attention in class, they should have an idea. If they're struggling, there are many things that you can coach your kid to do, right? If your kid is older, so middle school and high school, you may want them to reach out to the teacher. That might be like via writing an email saying, hi, Miss Miss Teacher, I don't understand problem number 2. This is what I've tried, with a screenshot, right? Because teachers love to see that the kid tried, right? If they got it wrong, they got it wrong. I mean, what can we do? It's about that process of like, I tried, I struggled, this is the feedback I need, I'm gonna improve, right? As they get younger, the kids are younger, it's sometimes where the homework feels so easy, so we like to like step in and help them if we do know, or if we don't know, but we're trying to figure it out, we may try to do the work with them or alongside them. Please don't. Right? Encourage them, have them try. And again, have the kid try and bring the work to the teacher and say, this is what I've done. This is what I understand. Because although it may feel good for the kid or for you, quite frankly, to take the homework completed and done with 100% to the teacher, it is very confusing to a teacher who sees the kid struggling in class for them to come home with the homework done 100% with no errors when it's not happening in school. And so that throws them off. And then quite frankly, if you get a teacher who thinks like, oh, well, maybe they're just like nervous in school and they do well at home, they won't target your kid. They won't support your kid because they don't think there's a need. And so you want to make sure that you are getting your kid to try their best always, right? Have that routine, try their best, and then communicate to the teacher. And as they get older, please have them communicate it. Because I think sometimes we make leaps on what we think they're struggling with. You want them to explain. And they should explain it to you as well. Like, hey, mom, like I'm struggling with this. I don't know what to do here. Or I don't know, like I keep adding these numbers. They're not like working out, whatever the case may be. That needs to be explained to you, right? Then you know, okay, they're thinking through it. It's not like they're just trying to be the procrastinator or the speed demon. They're not just trying to get through the work. They really don't get it. Have them pause. It's fine. Show the teacher. Have them explain. The teacher will gladly, I promise he will gladly sit with them and explain it to them and be grateful that now they understand where that kid needs support and that kid can do well moving forward.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. And remember, we did share in the chat, we'll share in the email after. There are specific tips. We have questions that you could use in math and in literacy that may help get your kid over that little bump, may get them thinking in a way that they weren't thinking. Well, we're out of time. This time always goes so quickly. Amari, thank you so much for joining. This was really nice.
Thank you for having me, Stacey.
Great. And thank you all. I know you guys are busy. The fact that you're here today shows that you're already doing probably a lot of things really well. So take a moment, celebrate yourself. And then I would love for everyone to commit to what are you going to change tonight? What are you going to change next week? Don't try to change everything in one day. But we do wish you the best of luck on this homework journey. Set up those routines at the beginning of the year, get it right. Your future self will thank you.